Let's have a little chat, shall we? Let's have a little occult chat. This is your host, The Occult View. Let's get right into what I wanted to talk about. Oftentimes when I'm doing something else, Spirit will speak to me and say, well, why don't you talk about this? And I always like to use imprints or examples from my own personal experiences. So when I speak, I'm speaking about my own personal experiences. This may not be everybody's experience, so I'm not speaking to everybody and I'm not speaking for everybody. When I speak, I'm speaking about my own motherfucking personal experiences dealing with toxicity in families and friendships or whatever experiences I have had growing up from a baby to a toddler to a teenager to a young adult to now being a full fledged adult at the age of 44 years old. Okay? So I speak from my own personal experience, not from another person's experience because I don't give a fuck about the next motherfucking nigga or bitch, to be honest with you. And I don't mean that in terms of, I don't care about people, but I don't care about what other people are doing in their lives and what they're saying. And I don't care about that. Okay. So I want to be clear about that. So I was thinking about something. And really, it's probably based on the dream that I had last night. I was thinking about the elders that I was raised around. And some of them was some ain't shit ass motherfucking people. I'm just being totally honest. And it's not politically correct to say things like that, but I'm going to say it because there's nothing, politically correct when it comes to spirit or the occult sometimes. Sometimes you just have to speak that truth. And the person that I'm really thinking about is my step grandfather. When I really think about him, he really didn't teach his kids shit. He didn't teach his biological children shit. He did not teach his stepchildren shit, which was my mother and my aunt, and my uncle. Those three were not his biological children. He didn't teach them shit. He didn't teach me shit. Well, I can't say he didn't teach me shit. He did teach me a few things. I can't say that. He taught me how to be self sufficient and not to depend on people. He did teach me that. But he taught me that through his nastiness. He didn't teach me that through love and compassion and understanding. He taught it through the lens of being a nasty, hateful, selfish, abusive individual. That is how he taught me. He was a Gemini, by the way. He was a Gemini. And when I really look back and I really study him, he's dead now. He's been dead for over 20 years, many years. He's been dead. When I look back and I, just re examine how he treated my grandmother, how he treated his own children, how he treated the people around him, it's really indicative of his nature. And it speaks to a broader perspective in terms of the elders that some of us may have come up, that some of us may have been raised around. My step grandfather, he taught his children how to fight. He taught them how to fight war. I'm sorry, he taught them how to battle. He taught them how to win the battle. He taught them how to fight. He taught my aunts and uncles, if one person is fighting your brother and sister, all of you all go out there and jump on them. That is what he taught his children. And in turn, when Family members have had disagreements. They all would come and jump on that one person. They've done it to me. They did it to me. They will come and gang attack you, not necessarily physically, but spiritually and emotionally and psychologically. When you have a disagreement with one family member and that family member is aligned with that family member that you had a disagreement with, they will all come and jump on you. That is what he taught them. He didn't teach them any values. He didn't teach them about having integrity. He didn't teach them about any of that. He didn't teach them how to survive. He taught them how to fight. He taught them how to win the battle, but he didn't teach them how to win the war. And that's what I want to talk about. And it's a much broader perspective throughout the Black community that I was raised in. I'm not talking about nobody else. I'm talking about the Black community I was raised in here in the DC area. So I'm not talking about nobody else's experience, so nobody else won't get it misconstrued, okay? When I look at my step-grandfather, he died tragically. He died alone. He died not speaking to me. He died not speaking to his daughters. He was bitter and angry with everyone because his health was declining. But he was a bitter, angry person even before his health declined. He was just a nasty man. Sometimes he would do nice things for you if the mood hit him, but he was a nasty man. And I don't mean in terms of being a disciplinarian. He was abusive. He was abusive. He was narcissistic. He had no redeeming qualities. And that is what he passed on to his children. That is what he passed on to his sons, my uncles. And that is why my uncles, that is why they don't have some of the things that they have, that they could have. He lost one of his children before he died. One of his sons died before he did. One of my uncles was murdered. He didn't teach them any values. He was too busy being a bully and being abusive. I remember my mother and my aunt told me this story. One time, they, along with one of my other aunts who's now deceased, they went to a party and they came in late. And he would not open the door for them. He made 3 girls sleep on the front porch. He made three of his daughters, one of his one biological daughter, the other 2, my mother and the other aunt, they weren't his biological children, but nevertheless, he took them on as his. So he made his 3 daughters sleep on the front porch all night long, all because they came home late. And I know some people will say, well, that's how parents were back then. It doesn't make it fucking right. And then we wonder why the bloodlines are cursed. It doesn't make it right what he did. And no disrespect to my grandmother, I don't understand how she allowed that to happen. But then again, yes, I do, because she was afraid of him. She was afraid of him because he used to beat on her. So that next day, when the sun came up, a neighbor across the street from us, she saw them sleeping on our family front porch. This was before I was born, by the way. She saw them sleeping on the family front porch. She told them they could come over and eat breakfast. And she fixed breakfast for them because she probably felt like that was deplorable what he did. You don't do that to children. You don't do that to boys, and you don't do that to girls. All because they came in late from a party. I can understand them disciplining them once they came in the house, but to make them sleep on the front porch, and then when I really sit back and think about all of the issues that my mother and her sisters have, this is why. There's always a reason. There's always a nucleus to what is happening or what has happened or what has caused people to become what they are. So after they ate breakfast, I guess my grandmother or him let them in the house. They went back across the street. He left them in the house. But he didn't go to work that day. He stayed home and made them clean the whole house from top to bottom. That's fine if that was their punishment. But you made them sleep on the front porch. You could have let them in the house, let them get into their beds, and then the next day you could have lit their asses up and made them clean that damn house up. That would have been fine. But for you to make girls, especially, sleep on the front porch, girls, and then when I sit back and think of all the problems that my aunt and my mother had and my mother has, when I think about all the problems that they have emotionally and psychologically, it stems from shit like that. And that wasn't even my mother's biological father. See, he wasn't going to teach them, or even the boys in the family, he wasn't going to teach them how to survive. You know why? Because I'm not going to say distracted, but he was so much more concerned about his own survival. He didn't give a fuck about the next generation. Like a lot of these elders, they don't give a fuck about the next generation. That is why they don't set up provisions for the next generation. That is why they don't give a fuck, because they don't give a fuck. Instead of him sitting down with his children and stepchildren that he accepted and grandchildren, by me being the oldest grandchild, he could have sat down with us and said, listen, we're a family. This is what we're supposed to do. This is what we're not supposed to do. We're not supposed to fight each other. We're supposed to work things out with each other. We're supposed to make sure that family is okay, like Mama Joe did in Soul Food. But of course, it would have to take the matriarch, not the patriarch. Because that's where the magic is with the matriarch. Like she told her family in Soul Food, she said, yeah, we're going to have hard times. Sometimes we may not get along, but you got to come together. You got to put that aside and come together and make a fist and become a mighty blow. And what she was saying is that you have to come together as a family and do your magic to make sure nobody can penetrate and harm you, and you can be prosperous. My family had so many opportunities to be prosperous. My uncle, the one that I told you that was murdered, we had a family store, a beautiful family deli that should still be operating till this day. That should have stayed in our family. But my uncle, because he made bad decisions with money, and he did not have a father who could advise him on the proper thing to do, he just told my uncle, sell the business, get rid of it. It has something to do with taxes. My uncle wasn't paying his taxes. That family deli was beautiful. It was beautiful. We had a Slurpee machine in there. We sold sandwiches. It was like a regular convenience store. We could still be in business, and that could have been passed down from generation to generation. That's generational wealth. But no, he allowed the misinformation and the misguided information from his uneducated father, my step-grandfather. He allowed him to influence him to sell his business. And then not long after that, my uncle was murdered. Because see, that my uncle owned a home improvement business, he owned a beauty salon, and he owned the little grocery store. And that's how black people were doing back then. But because of ill advisement and elders who don't advise their children properly in this situation, he lost it because his father was one of the managers of the deli. And he was so nasty. He was so nasty and begrudgeful. You would have thought that it was his store, my step grandfather. Yeah, he was one of the managers. And anytime somebody was trying to teach me how to like do the cash register and stuff like that, he would come in and stop that and say, get that motherfucking boyfriend from behind that cash register before you give away all our money. Like I didn't know how to count or something. It's so funny when he wasn't around, I did better. But that's how you teach. That's how you teach the next generation. How else am I supposed to learn? But the thing is, they don't want you to learn. That's the whole thing. They don't want you to learn anything. These elders. They would rather be dead and gone, and they would rather you be destitute. They would rather you live in poverty than learn how to be prosperous. A lot of our elders, they weren't shit. And I'm talking about the ones that I came up with. They weren't shit. And people can say, well, that's from slavery and all that. I don't buy that. I think it's a conscious decision. You can't put everything on fucking slavery. It's a conscious decision that they made to curse their own family members, to curse the younger generation. Because they don't want you to succeed. They don't want to see you prosperous. And my uncle, God rest his soul, what he doesn't understand is that the reason his father ill-advised him was because his father was jealous of him. My uncle was a drug dealer, but he also opened up businesses and stuff. So he kind of had some sense. His father, on the other hand, he never had anything. He didn't even have a life insurance policy. His children had to bury him. When my step grandfather died in 2001, 2002, his children had to bury him. That motherfucker didn't even have a life insurance policy. And the daughter that buried him was the one that he wasn't even speaking to at the time. Because when he could not monopolize all of your time, and when you did not go along with everything that he said and you had a mind of your own, he turned against you. It's like the Mommy Dearest effect. Because Christina Crawford said in her Mommy Dearest memoir that Joan Crawford began to turn against her when she became around 3 or 4, when she developed a personality of her own. And that's what happened to me as it pertains to some of these elders in my family, particularly my step-grandfather. And the reason I'm talking about this is because this is what I call a generational curse, because his influence is still having an effect on the family even after he's gone. My mother doesn't speak to her sisters and brothers. Her sisters and brothers don't speak to her. A lot of them have been on drugs, including my mother. It's just a broken system, a broken nucleus. And nobody wants to come to the table and say, well, this is what I contributed to this, and this is how we can fix it. That's a start in trying to break that curse. It takes a little bit more than that, but that's a start, in my opinion, in my spiritual assessment. But he was jealous of my uncle that owned the businesses. He was jealous. He was jealous of my uncle. That is why he ill-advised him. And then in turn, he got some money out of it too. When my uncle sold those businesses, my grandfather got some money out of it too, because he was only interested in money. He wasn't interested in long term. He was interested in short term. He was a calculated, disgusting, evil individual. And if somebody hears this in my motherfucking family, I said it and I ain't taking it the fuck back. I meant what the fuck I said. Y'all just gonna have to deal with that motherfucking shit. Here I am, his grandson. He stopped speaking to me because he could not monopolize all of my time. And I grew into my own personality. He got mad at me over something very stupid because I didn't want to buy a suit from him or something like that. Now, I'm your grandson, and you want me to buy a suit from you. I didn't have no money at the time to buy no motherfucking suit from you. So he got mad at me about that. Then, if I didn't answer his calls right away, or if I didn't talk to him for a couple of days, this motherfucking nigga was tripping. He was tripping. Like we were going together or some bullshit. And I had to tell him one time, I am not my motherfucking grandmother. God rest her soul, but I am not my grandmother. You do not keep tabs on me. I'm a 21, 22-year-old grown man. You don't keep no tabs on me. But this is the type of shit that a lot of us have to deal with these toxic, dysfunctional elders. And he was not my bloodline, to be honest with you. And thank God for that. But they don't want the next generation to succeed. They don't want the next generation to be prosperous. Even their own children. And unfortunately, I don't mean to be, I'm not trying to beat up on men, but since we're talking about it, if the shoe fits, this was all toxic, patriarchal magician's work. He beat on my grandmother to make her feel like she had no value. He beat her so badly it caused her to have a massive heart attack prematurely, which took her life, because a couple of weeks or a week prior to her having that massive heart attack, he beat her black and blue. You can't keep beating on people without there being some type of internal problems. The stress of that took my grandmother out of this world. But we don't talk about stuff like that. We're supposed to just keep thinking that everything is okay when it's not. Do you know how many people out there go through this in their families? And then if you really sit back and wonder why your family may be so dysfunctional, or why you're having the problems that you may be having in your family, you think about some of the men that may be in your family. But anyway, that's all I have to say. I just wanted to drop that little tidbit. Hey, I just wanted to drop that little tidbit. That was on my mind, and I just wanted to say that. Thank you, and have a good day.